All right, everybody, welcome back to the Nomad Strength Show. I have a guest today I've been really excited to talk to for a long time. I've followed him for a long time, and I've got the new book right here that I've been going through for the last couple of weeks, and I'm really excited to talk to him about it. But I've got Jim Shockey here today. So, Jim, thank you for making time today. I'm really excited to talk to you.
No, it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to it as well.
Awesome. I kind of want to start with the book because of the way that it was presented, where you said this was a novel 25 years in the making. And I'm kind of curious, like, why did it take 25 years? Like, how does that idea spawn so long ago? And how did that journey bring it to, like, where now it's here finally?
Yeah. You know, I started when I was 10 years old. I knew I would have a museum, and I started on that pathway. So the outdoor things I've done, gathering, a lot of it was cultural as well, to bring the pieces back for the museum. But I also, at 10 years of age, started my first novel. I knew I'd be a novelist in my life.
Okay.
But I realized real quick, I mean, I could collect seashells and insects and pretty rocks, fishing lures I could steal from my dad's and my grandfather's tackle box for the museum. But writing is, you have to have a story to tell. And at 10 years of age, I mean, I got about page 8 and horrible. I just can't.
Right.
But I live my life with that intent. I have no problem setting goals that are half a century away. And I sat down in about 91 to 93, somewhere in there, and I penned the first words of Zhivago's dead. I hunted him down and I killed him. Back in that long ago. So, excuse me, 30 years ago. And I sat there and I mean, I'd lived, I'd done a lot by that point in my life.
Yeah.
But not enough yet. I actually realized again that no, not ready yet. Yeah. And there's two ways you can write as or become an author of a novelist. Come out of university or wherever and start writing, and that's, you imagine places and maybe you go there to research it, and or you just live life and live out on the edge of where the average person out there, the everyday living. I mean, you live sort of on the outlying areas, and that you create a story. I mean, you live a story. So eventually in 2019, October, Mozambique was my last international trip, and I determined that in 2016 because I knew I was booked out that far in advance, and if I didn't cut it at some point and sit down and start writing the story, it would never get done. So 2019 November, I sat down and picked up those words again. Zhivago's dead. I hunted him down and I killed him, and I started writing the novel that I had now lived enough to have a story to tell. So I that was my way of writing. I needed, maybe I don't have a great imagination, so I just needed to live it, and instead of making it up.
Well, and that's one of the really cool things about even how the book is introduced at the beginning, where you talk about, like, there's ways to corroborate a lot of the stuff that's in the book as things that actually happened by talking to the people that you reference, or, it's like you kind of intentionally blur the line of, did this actually happen or did it not? And, like, I think the only way to do that, like you said, is to actually have lived and been experiencing those types of things for your whole life prior to that.
Yeah, and that's I wanted it to be like quicksand. I think I say that in the preface. I wanted, if you struggle against this suspended reality, and you try and prove, or this can't be true, this can't have happened, you're going to find out it did happen. This happened, and you struggle, and you just get deeper and deeper into that novel's hold. It's an autobiographical, abstract, fictional thriller, and there's no category for that.
Right.
Jack Carr, the Only the Dead and the Terminalist, he read it, and that's what he said. He said, I don't know, where would you put this novel?
Yeah.
Because it's not just a fictional thriller, because there's too much reality. Well, it's not an autobiography either, because there's some fiction in there, and I kind of tongue in cheek and wink wink say that it's 80% fact, and the 20% that would put anybody in jail, that's the fiction part, right? So it's up to
That's a
everybody.
good one. It keeps you safe too throughout. Keeps you a little bit safer too throughout a lot of that.
Yeah, but I say in the preface, I would love somebody with unlimited funds to dig deep. I hire every private detective you want and just see what you end up with. And there's layers of layers of layers. You dig that, you're going to end up here, and you start digging there, you're going to end up here, and it's because I've lived that life. I mean, I've lived that, and I say, I didn't have a story to tell, but now I do, and this is my story. Call me Hunter.
So from that time you wrote that first line, almost 30 years ago or so when it was, from that time to actually sitting down to write the book, were you writing it in your head throughout that whole time, or was it like I sit down and now I remember and I can craft the story from there, or like in those decades, or you're like, ooh, I gotta make sure we put this in the story when I get to it, type of thing?
No, because I was living it. So it was, and so if I would sit on a mountain, say in the bamboo forest, Urubulu high bamboo forest in Ethiopia, waiting for a mountain yalla, I was writing it. If I was sitting in a customs office in Russia waiting for permits to get my firearms into the country, hours and hours, it's mind numbing, but it's not if you're writing the novel.
Right.
So and the story was, I was living the story, so it was not. I just had to be thinking, what words, how do I craft it, how do I form it into a novel where it's interesting? And I kind of half joking say that I could have written the first 100 pages when I did finally sit down to write. I could have written the first 100 pages watching TV. I could have been watching Laverne and Shirley reruns and been writing the novel because I'd already written it. It was like being in a.
It was just a matter of getting it on the page and getting it, or on the screen or whatever, actually getting it out there at that point.
And there's structure to a novel, and it's got to have some sort of a format that is interesting for people. So, and I picked third person omniscient to write from that perspective, but also second person, which is not done in novels. It's somebody telling somebody else in the novel. It's done in autobiography. So again, it just blurring even the perspective. Is it real or not? And it'll be interesting to see, because it's you can't sit at a beach and read this thing and think you're gonna pick it up 2 pages a night while you're at bed just before sleep. I mean, you gotta focus on it, because it's not that it's complicated, but it's Da Vinci Code. Kind of Da Vinci Code meets Girl with the Dragon Tattoo meets Hunger Games meets Mila's Sense of Snow, a European novel. So it's it would be interesting to see if people say if they're ready for that kind of a, like I say, it's almost a new genre.
That's so cool, because I took it with me last week when I was going on an elk hunt, and so I was reading it by my lantern in my camper at night, and I almost had like that exact same sense. I'm like, if I keep going, I'm gonna need to keep going and for like a few more hours and just dive down. And I'm like, I had to make a choice to put it down every night, because I'm like, I'll stay up and just keep doing it, because I'm like, what is this? I gotta figure this out, type of thing, which was cool.
Yeah, funny story about that. Willie Robertson from Duck Commander. Willie, I've known Willie since he was little, and I'd sent him an advanced reader copy, same thing you would have received. Yeah, and I got the Outdoor Channel got a hold of me. We were doing contract negotiations for our shows, and they told me they just had a meeting with Willie for I don't know what he's got going on with them, but this is the top people at the Outdoor Channel. And Willie Robertson, I mean, he's big time. Yeah. And they were in the business meeting, and he finally just said, "Look, I got to go. Meeting's over." And they said, "What's going on?" He said, "I'm reading Call Me Hunter, and I'm in the last." He says, "I've got one more chapter to go. I have to know how it ends." And so this is the Outdoor Channel guys telling me this story. So they're sitting there, and Willie's gone to go finish off Call Me Hunter, the last few pages, so he knows how it ended. He he got a hold of me too and told me that he loved it. He wants to see it as a TV series. He's quite excited. Yeah. So it's yeah, it'll catch you and to figure out what's going on. I mean, you got to kind of focus a little bit.
The process of actually sitting down and writing it, like, you said you had the story, you could have written the first 100 pages, in your sleep essentially, but putting together that structure and, I mean, having this be the first novel going through this process, like, how was that process of getting it into this form from your head? Like, was it different than you thought? Was it frustrating? Was it good? Was it all those things above?
No, I honestly loved every second of it. Jack Carr and I talked about it, and same thing. The process is really, really fun. I mean, in a kind of a self-flagellate yourself kind of way, because it's a lot of work. I mean, you have to write it, and I'd write every day religiously from 4 a.m. till 10 or noon, and then I'd go get some exercise. But then the next day I'd pick up what I wrote, and I would rewrite that. So I wouldn't start actually writing anything new until I'd rewritten what I wrote the day before. And then the next day the same thing again, whatever is new. And sometimes it'd be 3 days before I wrote new words, because to get each word and writing is like it's poetic, and it has to be the right word, and every word you can't waste, to me, the reader's time, or if it's not the perfect word, then it's not the perfect word. Find the perfect word, and if doesn't flow exactly, it's got to flow, and so I write, rewrite. I probably did at least 6. Before I got to the end, I probably did 6 rewrites already in the process of writing it. But then, so now you've got a manuscript, 450 pages or whatever it is. And I had to, I mean, is it good? You have to get some friends to look at it. Our son, he said, "Dad, there's no ending, and it's too long." He said, "I'd cut it back to whatever, 90 pages, 190 pages." So you get input from people, and other people loved it the way it was, and you have to kind of file it all and say, okay, is there anything I can change? So I did another rewrite. But now you've got a manuscript that a few people have read, friends, and they're going to blow smoke because they're friends.
Right.
But is it good enough? And so you can self-publish at that point. Get somebody to copy edit it and self-publish it. That's easy. And I'd sell 5,000 copies easily. Which is good, but I didn't want that. I like to compete. I hate handicaps in golf because I want to go head to head with Tiger, and I want to see how much do I have to improve to actually, I don't want to have a handicap where him and I are equal. I know I'm not equal, but so writing was the same thing. Is this novel good enough to make it in the big leagues? But you can't get it. You can't even play in the big leagues until you have a agent. Because the big publishers won't accept a manuscript unsolicited. It's not going to happen. And then, agents don't accept unsolicited manuscripts either. So you kind of have to ignore that rule and give them an unsolicited manuscript. And it's interesting. My Esther Fedorkovich, she gets 1,000 unsolicited manuscripts a month. So she's got 13 readers that read the manuscripts that come in. She can't read them all, and she doesn't want to waste her time with books and or novels and manuscripts that aren't good enough. So you have to get through those 13 readers before you ever get to the agent. So they've got to recommend it. Then the agent has to actually read it and like it. Well, a novel isn't like watching a half-hour TV show. It takes 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever it takes to read it. But I made it through the 13 and made it, through Esther, and we did FaceTime like this, and it was pretty funny. She had her paper from all the 13 writers in front of her, and she said, I have to ask you this first question, because she didn't know me. She said, "Did you actually write this?" Well, yeah, and I think it's because here, cowboy hat,
right,
hunter guy, outdoorsman. How can you possibly actually be sentient and be able to put a sentence together, and it's not just a straight hunting story. It's a novel, and it's a fairly complicated plot line, with anti-heroes and protagonists and antagonists, and she, that was her first question, and I said, well, of course I wrote it. And then she said that there are 13 writers that said, sign this guy, he's the next great writer. That's what it said.
That's awesome.
She showed it. Yeah, so now I had an agent. And maybe everybody out there is getting bored with this, but if you want to be a novelist, this is the process that you're going to get it to this stage right now. You have the art. This is actually the first of the printed hardcover versions that'll be on the bookstore shelves. I just received my box of them the other day. They give me 50 that I can give away or sell or whatever. But now you've got an agent. She then has to go to the marketplace, the big publishers, and try and sell it to them. She believes in it. Simon & Schuster gets 1,000 manuscripts from agents and unsolicited manuscripts a week. So they don't get read. They just sit there on people's desks, and eventually, and they have their readers, and they go through that. So it was a year at least. From when Esther and I started trying to, because it's almost literary, it's literary because it's a different, genre. It doesn't fit in one of the commercial genres.
Yeah.
She sent it to 10 literary publishers, and not one of them read it. Not one read it. They all sent it back because what they did was they Googled Jim Shockey. Right. And this is, basically, I'll paraphrase, but every single one of them said, he can't write literature. This is not, it can't be literature. We didn't bother reading it because he's too much of a celebrity, is what they said. And I don't think that's what I am at all. I'm not. I'm just a guy. But too much, social media following over 1.2 million. You're just not. You can't possibly write literature. And my takeaway from that was, you got to be a down and out professor of English lit that is committing suicide every second week and depressed. I don't know. I guess that's what you have to be to write literature. So then we had to reconfigure our marketing plan and attempt to get it into the commercial fiction world, which is very, very difficult. Like I say, Simon & Schuster gets so many books, and I wanted Emily Bessler, who's the best editor. She's the rock star. She's discovered, many.
She does Jack's books, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's the real deal. I mean, she's just so talented. She recognizes talent. That's her job. And I wanted her, but of course, try and get a book to Emily Bessler. So it took a year. And finally, you know what?
Wow.
Jack Carr. It was Jack Carr that actually got a hold of her and said, listen, you got to read this thing. And she did, and then it was, then the work started. Her and I did 4 rewrites, like complete rewrites. And I've read the book out loud to myself once, read it to Louise twice, just because that's when you pick up mistakes and little things. And 4 rewrites, and she made me give it an ending. She said, you can't leave it a cliffhanger. Now, I always had it as 3 books, because you can't do 1,000.
That was going to be one of my questions. Was this the plan, to build off of it for a series?
Yeah, well, because you couldn't tell the story in that short, one novel time. But I left it as a cliffhanger. So you want to find out what happened in this novel? Get the second one. And
right.
She said, "No, you're a first-time novelist." She said, "If you're Stephen King, you can do that. Or James Patterson, you could leave a cliffhanger and the readers will buy the next one." She said, "You do this to the readers on your first one, they'll hate you. They'll never pick up a book." I mean, she
got to tie up some of the ends at least.
Yeah. So I actually had to write the first 4 chapters of the second book and tack them onto the first book, just so it kind of wraps it up. Yeah, in a bit of a package. So there's an ending, but there's an opening there that the ending is it sets it up for the second and the third book, which are I had to sign a 2-book deal with Simon & Schuster, so I got to sit down and do all that work again.
Oh, the whole thing again.
I know. Yeah, which is the story is all there. I just got to continue with the story that I got down in the first book.
I was going to ask, because you brought up, you'd get up and you'd write early in the morning, and you did that every day. As far as process goes for writing, I'm always like really fascinated to see how everybody approaches this differently. And I was listening to, I believe it was Tim Ferriss's podcast, and he had on Stephen Pressfield. And Stephen Pressfield was talking about a quote where he said, asking about the same thing. Do you write just when inspiration hits, or do you have to stick to a schedule, like write every day at this time or whatever? And he said, the quote goes, I write only when inspiration hits, but it just so happens that it hits every morning at 9 a.m. Right. And so I've always thought it's like, you just, the best way to kind of create or foster creativity is to like force yourself to do it almost. And was that, it sounds like that was kind of maybe similar to how you experienced it.
Yeah, it's funny. You said creativity and force, but what it is, and it's Willa Cather, the professor's house, said that desire is the magic element in creativity. And if you could make an instrument, invent an instrument that could measure desire, you could then predict achievement. And so if you've got the desire, there's no force in it. That's same thing the person was saying at 9 a.m. It just so happens when creativity hits or inspiration. If you have the desire, you just do it. I mean, and outdoor, anybody involved with the outdoors, 4 a.m. is no big deal. You're right. Always up early, and you why? It's easier to sit at home, sleep in, watch the first football game, watch the second, watch the third, have dinner and go to sleep. Maybe watch a movie before sleep. I mean, that's easier. So you want to get up at 4 a.m. You say you're reading this Call Me Hunter in your camper on an elk hunt. I doubt you're reading it at 10 a.m. Well, you're out in the mountains first thing, and it's the same thing for writing. It's the same discipline, but the discipline comes because you have the desire to be disciplined. And so, it wasn't, I never had to force myself. I mean, I literally would wake up, yes, I got to get back, and you're living in that world. It's, yes, I have to go up on the mountain, and maybe I can hear the elk bugle and I can sneak up on them. And I mean, the desire to feel that morning mist, the coyote wind, listen to it, as the birds, start to chirp and call, and the dawn starts to break. I mean, that's I guess that's the payback. That's the but it's the motivation that comes in the beginning. Desire, and desire is what causes motivation. So I never had any trouble with that. And I think there's a very wise fellow once told me that the difference between writers and everyone else is writers write. So many people want to write a novel, and they'll write a page or two, but writers don't do that. They continue. Hemingway, I mean, he wrote every morning till 10, I think, before he had his first gin and tonic. And it didn't matter if it's good or not. I can't remember how many words he said. He wrote 4,000 words or 2,000 words. Had to write it. And that's you have to write it. Like I say, I would sometimes write something and then spend the next 3 sessions of writing, 3 days of rewriting what I wrote, because it was kind of crappy. So to get it just right. But then I'm always trying to add to that as well. But you can't go on to the next. And to rewrite something is the same thing as writing. You're spending your time, at that computer word processor, and if you do that every day for 6 months, for 8 hours, that's a lot of writing. It's a lot of pages.
It's a lot.
You can do a 2,000 word article every day. Well, 6 months, do the calculations. You've got 300 page article. Or what is it? 300,000 word article at the end of that 6 months. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like you can, but you have to do it.
And then just the refining of the skill over that amount of time too. Like you're just a much better writer and self-editor at that point, anyways, just from spending so much time doing it.
Yeah, that I've written over 1,000 articles for hunting magazines. And I've written 4 other books that are, just hunting magazine article-oriented short stories. The craft and the skill it takes to write, you can't hone it within one novel. Unless you're some kind of uber talented genius. Like I wrote another novel back about 90 or somewhere in there, called The Lordly, and I picked it up actually yesterday. And I had it all transcribed onto a format but it's pretty bad. I hadn't honed the skill yet, and I obviously didn't have a story to tell, so I was telling somebody else's story, and it didn't get better by the end of the novel. Reading it now a second time, I don't think you could hone the craft by inside that 6 month period. I think you have to pay your dues, and you have to write and write and write and write and write before you're ready to write something that's good.
Yeah.
And there'll be people that say, well, I'm 30 and I want to write, or 25 and I'm going to write the next great American novel. Yes, 100%. There's people that just have the skill, the talent, the ability, but the rest of us proletariat have to actually, get out there and shovel and dig the basement, before we can put a foundation wall up. And, other people just sort of, they build it without ever having to do any of the hard work.
It reminds me when you brought up Hemingway, he's got like one of my favorite quotes about writing, where I'll paraphrase it because I can't remember the exact way he words it, but it says, there's nothing to writing, you just have to sit down at the typewriter and bleed. That's pretty much exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You just have to do it, and you and then the bleeding part. You've got to put it out there for the world to read it. Yeah. And if you're thin-skinned, and this is your baby, you've created this out of here. It's one thing to write someone else's story, and there's a lot of novels are based on other people's stories, but to write your own story creatively, and you can't go, this is somebody else, oh, that guy's life wasn't that interesting, so it's not my fault. And it's not just technical writing. You're actually, this is your heart and soul, like your blood is going into this, and now people are going to read it. So do they, they can lambaste you, and they can do it on your shoulders, your work. Every critic that's ever existed that's a negative type critic, they're doing it on the backs of people that actually did the work, and what are they doing? They're trying to tear down something that someone created, and so that's easy. That's easy. Every negative critic is going, I'll get that guy now, that is listening. But the truth is, when it goes out in the public and they're reading it, you better be prepared for, I don't like it. I don't like this. I've been at the crosshairs many times of various groups and organizations and people with ideologies that are different than what I believe. And so I've got pretty thick skins, but so I can read these things. But I read a review on the Arc the other day, and a critic said, and in the book, about 60 pages in, there's the protagonist, a young lady, 26 years old, was talking about someone else in her office. This is a fictional novel, and she's saying, he's an insipid millennial. An insipid, gender-confused millennial with a man bun. That's her opinion of her. This is a fictional character giving a fictional opinion about a fictional character, and I know the story. I know what happens, in the end, and not in the first novel. It's it's already in the outline for the second one. That she's wrong, and I'm giving it away, but she's wrong, and how can you learn if you don't accept that there could be, mistakes? You have to. This is the point. You have an opinion, you have your ideology, you just believe this, but something happens that makes you realize, oh, I was wrong. I was an opinionated, intolerant, bigot, whatever you want to call it, sexist, racist, and I was wrong. Now I have to open my mind and say, okay, and accept and apologize, and but you have to, if you never let that, I guess, lower sensibilities come out in a character, you can't correct it. You can't make a point about that tolerance is better than that opinion. It's wrong. It's not right. It wasn't evil. It's just that person's opinion. But this critic, they gave it a 1 star or no rating or something. Said I read to that line, and I will never read a novel that has that line. That would say something. A character would say something like that. It's like, wow. Like you want to talk about intolerance.
I was just gonna say thin-skinned. Yeah.
They and it's cognitive dissonance for them to accept that even a fictional character could say something that offends them, and so but anyway, so back to the bleeding part, you have to be able to, look at that and go, holy cow, really? But it is, and not take it personally and say that person, I'm inadequate. I don't have any. I shouldn't have any self-confidence. You have to still maintain that your wholeness without letting those people take chunks of you. And even though it's your baby, they're throwing stones at. So that's the bleeding part for me.
So was there any difference between this as a project where you're putting out there something that you've worked on, and obviously you say you've got thick skin and can handle this kind of stuff, but was there something different about this versus all of the other projects and things that you've done in the past, like the TV shows and all that kind of stuff? Was there anything different about this particularly in that regard? Maybe not that maybe it feels different when somebody gives a response to it or something like that. Was there any of that with this?
What's different about it is I'm trying to. This book is not designed specifically for the hunting world or the outdoor world. It's designed for mainstream, and so the difference on this one is, when I'm already catering to our core audience. Whatever. I've been doing this for 40 years in our world, and okay, go ahead. Cheap shot me. You don't like whatever I did on TV, or you think the cowboy hat's stupid, or you think I'm old. It doesn't, whatever. That's just quack, quack, quack. It doesn't even. I don't worry about that, and it's because I've lived that life, and it's this one. The difference on the criticism is, I'm trying. I've flipped the stereotypes on this. The protagonist is a young lady, not a big rough outdoors guy. The anti-hero is an older hunter, becomes a hunter in the book. So he's a hunter, but very philosophical and spiritual about the hunting that he does. And there's nothing gets killed in the book at all. But he talks about that, discovers it as in the later part of his life. The villain is an animal rights activist. So I've I've twisted it so that, yes, of course, if you're out to that side of this villain starts off as being not likable, but at least, yes, I agree with him on this and I agree with him on that. But then you find out just how evil the guy really is.
Yeah.
Suddenly you've related to that, but this is what comes with it. Well, but now you got to hate his ideology. But you can't, because you believe in the ideology. But then the anti-hero is coming at you from another side, and suddenly you hated him from the beginning. But now, wait a minute, he actually stands for what's good and right, and so I've twisted that. So criticism, like someone like that's so intolerant, that critic that won't even read past a line because it's a character in a book that offends them. If people in the mainstream don't get a chance to read this book, I think it'll be a disservice to them if they're readers. If they like reading, they're going to miss out. That's their loss. But also, it's our loss in the outdoor world, because it gives us a voice to to show that you know what, we're not all louts that you have a stereotyped as. We don't walk in the room, spit on the floor. We have a baseball cap on with an elk antler, and we have a cowboy hat on, and you know, or whatever, a Primos necky thingy. You know, I mean, that's, yeah, we don't dress like you. But you know what? Lots of people in the world don't dress like you either. You know, are you intolerant of them as well? I don't speak like you either. You know, I talk about the rut and getting out there and you know. Okay, so we're almost speaking a different language as well, but there's many people speak a different language than you. Are you intolerant of them as well? Right. My spirituality, my cathedral is the outdoors. You know, that doesn't fit in with your cathedral is downtown, you know, Los Angeles, New York City, Rodeo Drive, you know, Toronto, 5th and Bloor or whatever. You know, Saks Avenue is your, you know, so we're different again. But there's many people that, you know, they pray and show reverence to edifices that are different than what you do. So are you intolerant about them as well? So the purpose of this whole novel, honestly, and the when you distill it right down to the essence of the novel, is to reach out to mainstream with and show that, yeah, we can actually put a sentence together, and we do have a spirituality. We do have, you know, the higher sensibilities, and we're articulate. And look, we're in your world, and we can do this. And I think, I'm hoping that something like this will be a catalyst. Jack Carr's already started. You know, his character's not exactly politically correct. You know, it's toxic masculinity, and he's a hunter, use a bow and arrow, and he's already cracked the door open. Hopefully this novel will open it a little bit more, and also show, you know, ultimately it's about money. So if the publishers can make money, you know, if we can buy it as hunters, if every hunter goes out and buys every Jack Carr book and buys this book, there will be more. They will allow more of us to get out there. And I'm not saying them specifically, but our message has been hijacked since the early 60s. And we've just been attacked, stereotyped, and you know, before that, Hemingway and Ruark, they were highly regarded. I mean, Ruark was in like 90,000 newspapers. You know, Hemingway was Hemingway. Yeah. And then for whatever reason, you know, that pendulum just goes this way and that way, and it's time for it to swing back, because it's just gone a little too far, where they're vilifying and marginalizing people like you, like me, and we know family people, good people, that, you know, honorable, that are, you know, believe in patriotism and you know, stand up for right and wrong, chivalry. These are things we believe in, and yeah, they're maybe not politically correct nowadays to open a door for a lady, but you know, my wife Louise never opened a door in our entire 39-year relationship, and that's not because I was, you know, looking down at her and thinking she wasn't capable of opening the door. Of course she was. It's not that. It's my way of showing respect, and you know, we haven't been allowed, especially in the last few years, to tell that story at all. So this, I'm hoping that this novel will reach. So back to your original, is there anything different about this project? Yeah, it's a lot different, because I read a hunting article. I know there'll be guys, yeah, that guy doesn't really do that. He doesn't walk the walk, or, you know, that's just, you know, politics of envy. But this one is different. So yeah, the process, or what happens to it is really important to me, and if it's not given the opportunity to get out into those hands, because they're controlling the distribution of our messaging, even in a form that they actually recognize as something, and you know, they respect. I mean, I think that would be a sad thing. So I think there's a lot more writing on this, and that's why I've asked all the hunters, support it, just buy it, even if you don't want to read it, buy it, send it off to your grandmother. Not because I'm making money, believe me, I make more money doing a lot of other things in my life than getting $1.50 an hour writing for, you know, 6 months and taking 4 years to get a project actually complete. You know, so it's not about the money. It honestly isn't. But it is about giving us an opportunity as hunters to change the perception in the, you know, mainstream media, and that 80% of the population that doesn't hunt, but, you know, they're not anti-hunters, not animal rights activists, and they're just not outdoor people. But you know, if we reach them with a message, like I say, it's important that we support it. Just like we'd all support Jack Carr and all his novels. Every one of us should have every one of his novels lined up, even if you never read. And we're not always the best readers. Audiobooks we're a little better at, but
Right.
but as long as everybody buys it, I think it'll make a big difference. Then they can't ignore it. Can't ignore our message.
And you have, and you talk about changing or beginning to change the perception of the group outdoorsmen hunters, right? And the last few years, like you mentioned, I mean, maybe 10, 20, maybe more, it's been pretty swung the pendulum far one direction. And do you sense, even with this book, like in other mediums and channels, because you do the TV stuff, you have all these other projects that you do you sense it at all where it's maybe kind of starting to come back that way anyways, and so this is like the perfect timing wise for like this type of book where maybe it's softening a little bit or starting to come back down and go the other way already?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, there's quite a trend. What is it? Manhood, is whatever the catchphrase are using out east in the big urban centers. I mean, I'm not judging, and I'm not saying what's right or what's wrong, but there's also kind of what's natural and what makes common sense for a lot of us. It doesn't mean it is common sense for everybody. It doesn't mean it is natural for everybody else. But there's a good swath out there that I think, we were maybe not the most vociferous in voicing our opinions. We're not out there with placards and bonking people on the head and doing whatever, activists that have, promulgating their ideologies. We don't do that. We kind of just live and let live and I think there's been a dearth of actual product for us that we can relate to. There's a lot way out in each wing, but there's nothing in the kind of this middle. And let's face it, a bell curve pretty well covers everything in this planet. If there's too much out here, then it's you're going to end up being a demand for things that are out here. Well, if you go too far out here, then there's a demand for this, and it is truly a social pendulum that swings back. And I don't know what the terms are. 60 years, they're probably speeding up. We're probably going to get into a I don't know, but I think absolutely there is a movement. The field to table movement has people realize if you're going to stuff your pie hole, you might as well have things that are organic.
Right.
I mean, hunters, fishermen, outdoors people, gardeners, farmers, ranchers. I mean, yeah. Guess what? We've been saying that for a long, long time. Let's this is your temple. And nowadays we really, especially with all the crap that's I'm sitting here with a plastic thing in front of me and all kinds of finishes on this stuff, like those are, I'm breathing that crap, and it made our life easier, but if we're also adding to it with a whole bunch of processed crap, going down the gullet, it's, so I think people realize that, and in the cities, it's very difficult for them in the urban centers to realize that goal, but it's not difficult for us out in the rural areas to do it. But I think the people in the city are starting to look at us and say, okay, maybe they dress weird. What a weird hat that guy wears. But I think there's definitely more tolerance, which is wonderful because, the world's not that big a place anymore, and 8 billion of us, we better start learning to get along and tolerate, your point of view, my point of view, his point of view, their point of view, its point of view, whatever, it doesn't matter. We just have to start being more tolerant, and so I think there's people are starting to realize that. I hope. Still, I talking about our countries, Canada, United States. It's a big world out there that not everybody's doing that at this point. There's places that it's not happening. Places where it's still like the Dark Ages. Usually autocratic, either communist or fascist. Too much control,
Yeah.
people that circle bell curve, just wrap the ends around, and that's where they're the same. You just bell curve is probably not the best. Actually, I just designed a new one. It should be like this and like that.
Loop all the way back around.
Same. If you're this way, that way. If you're that extreme, you're the same. So, yeah, I think there's greater acceptance for sure. And people like Joe Rogan. I mean, look what he's done. He's
been huge.
That's the biggest reach of anybody, and he says it. I'm a hunter. I'm a hunter, and I like controlling what goes in my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Rinella, another one, great. Cam Haines. These guys they're making a big impact in mainstream, and because their reach is so great.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. I think it's undeniable that there's still backwards people that think this is the 1990s, and that they don't want to look at the truth that
right.
Hunting is a great conservation tool around the world. Until you address poverty, it's the best solution right now, because you can't turn everything into a park, and people live there.
Right.
They have goats and cows, and you can't just say move out because I'm making this a park. So okay, well, it's a park. Well, now there's lions eating my goats and cows and even my children. Well, hunting solves a lot of that. Money comes into the community.
Yeah.
There are new wells, schools. They can build a tiny little hospital, bring in a doctor instead of an itinerant nurse that comes by every 2 weeks. Hunting solves the economic problems that the people have. So again, I think there's they're starting to look at it and say, well, that's just common sense and reality. So again, that helps shift the perception.
The international, in those third world type countries, was the example that I immediately thought of when you were given that example also, because those areas where like you said, like lions, you can't just take something that people use for their own resources for however many hundreds or maybe thousands of years, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, now it's fenced off as a park to protect this animal, but they don't think of what's the next step of the ramifications that happen because of that, where now you're pushing these animals into these places they aren't, or there's animals coming in to these places that weren't before. Like you're upsetting the entire ecosystem with it. So it's interesting to see, we need to just be thinking 1 to 2 to 5 steps farther down the line to be able to articulate that, be like, well, look, that's maybe not a terrible idea, but if you do that, this is what's going to happen, and that's bad, and it seems like that's what maybe isn't happening as much in a lot of those instances.
Yeah, well, again, it's knee-jerk reactions.
Yeah.
Solutions that are myopic. I mean, they're only this far out. What happens? Okay, what are you going to do with the people? You want the lions there. The lions are hungry. They ate the person's goat.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want them to get any money for someone else killing the lion, but they can't have the lion killing their next goat because the family's going to starve. What are they going to do? They're going to poison the lion. They're going to poison not just that lion. They're going to poison every lion, right? But if you make the lion their cash crop, I mean, it's a terrible thing to put it that way, but
sure.
But if you make that lion worth $100,000, they're going to look after the lion and the lion's family. And yes, one lion will die, but the rest are going to be alive. And usually, with good management and conservation, you take the lion that's beyond breeding age, that's actually, just taking resources away from the real viable population that's breeding and continuing to increase numbers. So we have to look at the wildlife in places like that. You have to give it to the people, and let them raise the lions, not in a pen, but
sure,
steward over the lions, steward over the antelope, because they would rather have the lion killing the antelope. So if there's lots of antelope, they get lots of lions, and their goats and cows are still okay. Give it back. Ejido is down in Mexico. That's what they're doing. Areas becoming traditional lands. All over the world it's happening. Australia, up in the Arctic. And it's not about Namibia. Some of the most successful programs where the tribal, I use that word not disrespectfully, but they, the people in the area manage the wildlife. It becomes their herds, their flock. They steward over that, and an elephant gets killed, but they get the meat from the elephant, and they were going to kill it anyway to sell the ivory for whatever,
right.
And they get 100 times more than they would have got for selling that, little whatever ivory it is.
Yeah.
And they get the meat anyway.
Yep.
So yes, they're going to look after those elephants, and it's common sense. But and I think people, like I say, are starting to see that. They're starting to accept. Well, I don't like hunting. I don't want to see an elephant killed. On the other hand, I get that if you don't, they're going to kill all the elephants because they're trampling their crops.
Yep.
They'll kill them all, and they'll kill them all for the ivory, for the $10 they're going to get a pound or whatever. So they're, the reality is you cannot have an ideology about the wildlife in places like that. You can't have your ideology, I hate hunting and I hate hunters, so I'm going to stop them. It doesn't matter the cost to the wildlife. That's not my concern. I want to stop those guys because they're getting pleasure. They have this warped, mutated vision of what we do in the wildlands,
right,
thinking we're out there to kill something. We get a joy from that. It's like that's sad.
Yeah.
We don't. There's no joy in killing something. There's a joy in the accomplishment of the effort that it took, the training that you had, the skills you had to hone, the fresh air, the exercise you're getting, the lifestyle that you're living, the self-reliance that you're gaining from this. That's what hunting's about. The kill, we don't do it to kill. I think it's Ortega de Gasset, the Spanish philosopher, that said, I don't hunt to kill. I kill to have hunted. And he's bingo, like that's,
yeah.
But people have to let go of their ideologies because they'll love those animals to death if they don't get practical in their perception of what's going on over there and think that, just by stopping hunting, I've stopped the killing of an elephant, that you've saved the elephants. No, you haven't. You've actually given the other elephants a death sentence. You've given the lions a death sentence because the people are not going to put up with them over there. And you got rid of the hunters, great. But what is your real goal in this? And I think that's where the dialogue will eventually have to take us, and we'll have to look at and say, well, you want the same thing I do, more wildlife, right? That's what we want. Okay, how do we do that? You want to make a park, but you can't kick all these people out. You can't get rid of their cows and their sheep, and they're growing their mattock there. You can't kick everybody out to make your park, so they're going to have to live there. Well, now there's lions and antelope eating and elephants stomping their thing. What are you going to do? It's not practical. It's a good idea, but it loves the animal to death because they're going to kill them all. They're going to kill. You think they're going to kill a goat when they go kill an antelope or snare an antelope? No, that's their wealth. But if the antelope's worth 100 goats, they're going to let you shoot the antelope, take the money, go buy 100 goats. I mean,
right.
And you can't. You have to address the population issue, poverty, and if we want more wildlife, we need to get together and realize that's, you want it, I want it. Okay, yes, we come from opposite spectrums, but we want the same thing. Okay, how can we affect that? And this is a good tool to make that happen, even though you find it reprehensible and repugnant, because of your ideology. What do you want? You want more wildlife, or you want to get rid of hunters? So I think eventually we're going to end up there, and there's younger people, like, look at you. I mean, I'm a lot older, and my generation can't change that easily anymore, but you guys are making a difference. You're changing that. I mean, look, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, someone sitting in the urban center, looking at that going, I'm in my suit and tie, and I go to my office every day on the 23rd story, and COVID hits, and now it's I'm entombed in my penthouse suite. I can't leave it. I can't get food. There's no supply lines. Supply chains busted. I mean, it's a tomb. What are you going to do? You're going to look. They look at you and go,
Looks useful.
Yeah. Maybe I want to reconsider my ideologies. Maybe hunting not so bad. And it's going to happen. It's organic. It's going to happen. And back to the book, those kind of things, everything. You're talking right now, us talking. This makes a difference every little bit. Maybe we'll reach one person out there. I would love whoever, that one person that's listening to this, that this gave them a different perspective on what we do and how we do it and who we are in a positive way. I'd love to, reach out to me on social media.
Yeah.
DM me, whoever you are out there listening, because and tell me, did it work? Are we on bang on here? Are we hitting that nail on the head? But I do believe that there's hope, because the truth is the truth. You can only color it and shade it and spin it, so long before people realize, well, it's not. There's no lions there now.
Yeah.
What happened to the lions? Well, there's no hunting. Well, guess what? There's no lions. Wasn't the purpose to have more lions?
Yep.
So yeah, reality is reality. And truth comes out eventually.
We've got a few minutes here before I let you go, and I want to give you the chance to, we've been talking about the book, and comes out in a couple of weeks. Public, I believe you can still pre-order it now. I wanted to ask, because, I ask all the guys that are hunter guys and outdoors guys when they come on the show, and you've got a incredible swath of stories here to choose from, I imagine, in your life. Do you have a favorite hunt that you ever went on, like that you consider to be, this was my favorite hunting experience?
Experience, no. Yeah, plural, experiences, yes. Anything with my family. My dad, I was there, Evie was there too, for his last whitetail. I guided him personally to his last moose at 79 years of age. Took him to Africa for the first time when he was 76. When he got his first kudu, I think was the first animal he got. And I, it was a long stalk, and I said, "Boy, that took a long time." He said, "Yeah, it took me 76 years." It's like, oh man, I grew up in a trailer park. We had no money, and Dad and Mom, when I was young. I mean, it was conversation every day was whether he'd get laid off, and whether we'd be able to afford to. And when we finally did buy a house, I mean, that's how he lived. It took 76 years for him to get there to be able to take that shot at the kudu. Those are, the most important hunts. Evie's first whitetail, her first bear, our son's first whitetail, his first bear. I mean, my father-in-law land, Evie on her first big game animal was a warthog over in Africa. And my wife, Louise, rest in peace, she was there, and she was never a hunter. I mean, she would literally take flies and let them go outside the house. And, I mean, we were total opposites, beauty, beast, lady tramp. But she was there because she knew that Eva wanted to try this, wanted to try this outdoor lifestyle, field-to-table living. And Louise, God bless her, was there. I mean, that, how can any other hunt be significant compared to that?
Yeah.
Family. That's, and then next in line is friends. The camaraderie you share. That's such a huge part of it, and it probably goes back to ancient times when maybe we lived in a cave and we were looking after each other, and so you'd be together and successful on a hunt. We were going to survive for another month or week, or depending how many were in the cave. It depends how big an animal. If it was my cousin Guy getting it, we probably would have lived for maybe the next day. If I was getting it, but this is what it's about.
Yeah.
Camaraderie, friendship, family, respect. So those are the hunts, not the size of the animal, 1 inch bigger. Oh, I got this big. Yeah, it's great. I think it's great, and I think selective hunting is the way to go for me personally. I get a lot of opportunity, and I don't eat, as much as I used to. I don't have to provide for a family as big as it was, and they're all moved on and providing for themselves now. But still friends. But size of the antler, record book,
Sure.
Whatever got my limit of ducks or those hunts. They just pale in comparison to the hunts with any of my hunts. So favorite experiences. Or any hunts with family members.
I love it. Well, Jim, I really had a pleasure talking to you today. I really appreciate you making time. The book, Call Me Hunter, comes out October 17th. I can still pre-order it on Amazon and anywhere else, correct?
Correct, yeah. I just got the word today that the pre-orders have hit 2,000, which is...
Awesome.
Yeah, it's really big for a first-time novelist, a debut novel. Nothing would make me happier if we can hit because this all becomes part of the bestseller list computations, and it's this novel switched the stereotypes. So
yeah,
So there are going to be a lot of resistance against getting this one onto the bestseller list. So yeah, if everybody goes and pre-orders that's listening right now, that would be awesome. A, you'll like the book if you're a reader. B, whoever you give it to for Christmas will like it if they are readers. And C, it's going to help the whole hunting world, the cause, the perception of hunters. It'll be a more positive thing. So yeah, if everybody goes out and pre-orders right now, that would be awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Jim, for making the time. I really appreciate it. It was awesome talking to you today.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was an honor.